Number 9. Jesse J. Warren. In the late 2000s, Jesse J. Warren worked as a mechanic at a Penske truck rental and leasing business near the city of Kennesaw, Georgia. He had developed a reputation among his co-workers of being unsociable and unable to focus on the job. Warren was ultimately let go. On January the 12th of 2010, in the afternoon, Warren returned to the Penske office clad in camouflage and armed with a handgun. He shot 4 co-workers and a customer. Only one of the victims survived. Warren then fled the scene in a Chevrolet S10 truck but was arrested less than a mile from the scene of the crime. Warren was deemed incapable to stand trial and in 2017 was indefinitely committed to a mental institution. Number 8. Verlin Spencer. In the late 1930s, Verlin Spencer was the principal of the South Pasadena Junior High School. By 1939, Spencer's critical and perfectionist style had caused friction with the school's staff. Superintendent George C. Bush eventually placed the principal on an involuntary leave of absence. Spencer's abrasive behavior worsened upon his return to the school, and he was eventually fired on April the 30th of 1940. The man didn't accept his termination and demanded a hearing, which was set for May the 6th. On that date, Spencer arrived at the administrative office where the meeting was held, armed with his .22 caliber Colt Woodsman handgun and 50 rounds of ammunition. He fatally shot Superintendent Bush, as well as the principal of the South Pasadena High School and the school district's business manager. He then drove a few blocks to the junior high school and gunned down 2 teachers who he thought had plotted against him. As Spencer was cornered in the cafeteria, he tried to take his own life by shooting himself in the abdomen. He survived his injuries and subsequently pled guilty to all charges. Spencer was paroled in 1977 at the age of 75 and lived out the rest of his days helping to rehabilitate former convicts in Hawaii. Number 7. Jing Hua Wu. On November the 14th of 2008, one of the deadliest workplace killings in Silicon Valley history took place at the office of a startup company called Cyport. After he'd been fired from the company, a man named Jing Hua Wu returned to the office later that day armed with a 9mm caliber handgun. The 47-year-old then executed 3 of his former bosses by shooting them in the head at point-blank range. The victims were the Vice President of Operations, Brian Pugh, Human Resources Manager, Marilyn Lewis, and the company's CEO, Sid Agrawal. Wu was arrested shortly after the multiple shooting. During his trial, he tried pleading not guilty by reason of insanity. As part of his defense, he claimed that he'd been wrongfully terminated and that he had no recollection of the killing spree. Wu was eventually found guilty on all charges and in August of 2013 was sentenced to life in prison plus 75 years, without the possibility of parole. Number 6. Vesta Lee Flanagan. On August the 26th of 2015, 2 workers were shot and killed at the WDBJ television station in Roanoke, Virginia. The perpetrator was 41-year-old Vesta Lee Flanagan, known professionally as Bryce Williams. Flanagan, a former reporter at the station, had been dismissed in 2013 for what was deemed as disruptive conduct. At the time of the shooting, 24-year-old news reporter Allison Parker and photojournalist Adam Ward, aged 27, were in a live morning interview with Vicky Gardner, the executive director of the local Chamber of Commerce. Flanagan approached them, armed with a Glock 19 handgun, and fired approximately 15 rounds. Parker and Ward died at the scene from critical gunshot injuries to the head and torso. Gardner was shot in the back, but survived. She later had surgery which involved the removal of part of her colon and her right kidney. As Ward's camera fell to the ground, it briefly captured the image of Flanagan with his weapon in hand. He fled the scene and footage was transmitted to the sheriff's office. A manhunt ensued in which the authorities located Flanagan by tracking his cell phone. A Virginia state trooper identified the vehicle that the shooter had used in his escape. After a chase of less than 2 miles, Flanagan crashed his car into an embankment. He was found with self-inflicted gunshot wounds to which he later succumbed in a local hospital. On his social media accounts, Flanagan had reportedly accused Parker and Ward of discriminating against him for being a homosexual black man. On the day of the shooting, he'd uploaded a 56-second cell phone video to his Twitter, filmed from the first-person perspective, showing him as he opened fire on Parker. Number 5. Frank Zorich. In 1992, Frank Zorich shot and killed 6 people at a factory in Besançon, France. After being fired from his job, Zorich had joined the army at 18 and was assigned to a parachute artillery regiment. For several months, he was mostly given guard duty and equipment management. It was reported that Zorich was also being bullied. He eventually deserted, and his contract was subsequently terminated. Nevertheless, that didn't stop his obsession with military conflicts, particularly the Vietnam War. In 1989, he found a job at a precision tooling business in Besançon. A couple of years later, he was let go after a serious disagreement with one of his superiors. Out of work, in financial debt, and having recently broken up with his girlfriend, Zorich began drinking heavily. Then, on July the 1st of 1992, he walked into his former place of employment while intoxicated and armed with a Colt AR-15 rifle, as well as a .44 Magnum handgun. He started shooting anyone he encountered inside. Because of the heavy machinery operating at the time, the sound of gunfire was initially drowned out. 4 workers were killed at the scene while 2 others succumbed to their injuries in the hospital. Zorich then took his own life. Number 4. Gary Martin. On February the 15th of 2019, Gary Martin opened fire on his former co-workers at the Henry Pratt Company in Aurora, Illinois. It's unclear whether Martin had been dismissed from his job a few weeks prior or if his termination had occurred on the day of the shooting. He was armed with a handgun that had a green laser sight attached to it. He shot and killed 5 male workers, including the plant manager, an HR manager, and a 21-year-old student on his first day as a human resources intern. Martin then engaged responding police officers in a 90-minute shootout, which led to 5 officers and a civilian being injured. The attacker was ultimately shot and killed by law enforcement. Martin had a criminal record going back to the mid-1990s and had spent jail time in Mississippi for felony aggravated assault. He'd previously made threats while working at the manufacturing plant, claiming he'd kill everyone inside if he ever got fired. Number 3. Thomas McIlvaine. While working at the post office in Royal Oak, Michigan, Thomas McIlvaine was suspended for repeatedly getting into altercations with customers along his route. The 31-year-old was known for having a short fuse, and he would also get into fights with his superiors. A man who'd previously served in the Marines with him reported that McIlvaine had been dishonorably discharged after using a tank to run over a car. Eventually, in 1991, he was fired from the Postal Service for insubordination. McIlvaine threatened violence if he wasn't reinstated. On November the 15th, he turned his threats into violent action and entered the office with a .22 caliber sawed-off rifle. McIlvaine started shooting his former co-workers, killing 3 and injuring 6. Several others were hurt after jumping from the windows of the 2-story building where the killing spree took place. With his murderous thirst for revenge satiated, the shooter turned the gun on himself. He was later pronounced dead at William Beaumont Hospital. Today's topic was requested by Arm Hunter. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Luang Yin. On August the 22nd of 1928, Chinese worker Luang Yin killed 11 people on a farm in California. Prior to the massacre, he'd been involved with gangs as a gunman and narcotics peddler. He used multiple aliases and in 1924 had been arrested in San Francisco for criminal activity. In 1928, Ying worked as a fruit picker at the Bryan Ranch about 5 miles from Fairfield, which was leased by a man named Wang Gi. 29-year-old Ying was fired after a few months when Gi found out he'd gotten involved with his teenage daughter. Ying returned to the ranch armed with a hatchet and a rifle. In less than 20 minutes, he killed or fatally wounded several workers as well as Gi, his daughter, his brother, and other members of his family. He mutilated Gi's body and afterwards fled in one of his automobiles. Ying was arrested by the police the next day and subsequently confessed to what at the time had been the worst case of mass murder in California's history. He was sentenced to death but took his own life in his cell at San Quentin Prison a few weeks before his set execution date. Number 1. David Burke. On December the 7th of 1989, a disgruntled former employee of US Air hijacked a Pacific Southwest Airlines flight, causing the death of 42 passengers. 35-year-old David Augustus Burke had been dismissed from his job as a ticketing agent for petty theft. Burke had tried to get reinstated, but the meeting with his manager, Ray Thompson, was unsuccessful. Burke then boarded Flight 1771 from Los Angeles to San Francisco, a flight that Thompson was also on as part of his daily commute. Burke hadn't surrendered his employee credentials, which is how he was able to sneak a .44 Magnum revolver aboard the plane. Most of what followed was deduced from the cockpit voice recorder. It's believed that after the plane had reached cruising altitude, Burke shot Thompson dead. A flight attendant then opened the cockpit door, informing the pilots that there was a problem. The gunman executed her, announcing, "I am the problem." 2 more shots were heard, likely indicating that Burke had either incapacitated or killed both pilots. The aircraft then pitched down and accelerated. It crashed into the side of a rocky hill in the Santa Lucia Mountains. It disintegrated after impacting at about 770 miles per hour, which is slightly faster than the speed of sound. Thanks for watching. What's your dream job quitting scenario? Let us know in the comments section below.